Good evening. The Board of Commissioners is the governing body of Clatsop County, all county service districts for which this body so acts, and as the Clatsop County Local Contract Review Board is now meeting in regular session. Will you please join me for the flag salute? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have the roll call, please?
Here.
Here.
Here. Here.
Looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So move. Second.
We have a motion second to approve the agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have a presentation tonight. Our presentation tonight is on the North Coast Business Park. Welcome, Mr. Summers.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening, Commission. My name is Michael Summers. I'm the Clatsop County Public Works Director. I have a brief presentation kind of giving an update on the North Coast Business Park. North Coast Business Park is located within the city limits of Warrenton. And it's kind of hard to see the map on the left. It's kind of in the center towards the bottom. It's out by Ensign Lane and Costco, Astoria Ford in the city of Warrenton. Just a little brief history of what happened many years ago. The map on the left indicates the cleared and graded sites. The business park is pretty much the center of that white expanse, and that was deforested and completely graded and regraded in the 1960s, late 60s, in preparation for a very large aluminum smelter plant. The aluminum smelter never came to be, and the land went fallow over many years. And then the county, Clatsop County, acquired it in the late 1980s. Since the late 80s, the county has been diligently working to develop the park into commercial and retail and industrial sites. Most notably, the master plan of the year 2000, completed by David Evans Associated, kind of slated the groundwork for moving forward. And it culminated with a very large land sale, about 70 acres in the 2006 era. And that 70 acres was sold to a company called North Coast Retail LLC, which developed the Costco and the other retail associated with adjacent to Costco on the kind of the easterly side of Highway 101 and Ensign Lane. As a result of that sale, the county entered into a cooperative improvement agreement with the state, ODOT, for ODOT to allow a traffic signal at Ensign Lane and 101. The developer built the first section of Ensign Lane, about the curvy section, that gave Costco access to Highway 101 and the signal, where the county completed the rest of Ensign Lane from 19th Street all the way to alternate 101, which was completed in November of 2013. And with that kind of laid out the groundwork for more transportation access for the remainder of the property. In 2010, after that sale for North Coast Retail LLC, which created the Costco, they did a fair amount of land development out there, which set up some lots, and Cardno, or at that time it was called WRG Design Inc., developed the 2010 Master Plan Update, which is currently the document we're working from to make improvements to the park. In 2015, the county completed a stormwater master plan and a wetland mitigation plan, and subsequently, after different time, but the county completed an application with the Oregon Business Development Department called Business Oregon to set up the Clatsop Enterprise Zone and have the park designated a regionally significant industrial area. The regionally significant industrial area is an acronym called RISIA, which preserves the zoning. It's industrial zone land, general industrial zoning in the city of Warrenton and the land use code. It preserves that for 10 years for
Mr.
this.
Chairman, may I just ask? So, Michael, that's very interesting. So regionally, what are we contemplating when do they define that? Is it 3 counties or?
That's a great question. I think it's statewide regional significance, because this park was designated. The body that made the designation, and it got designated in the legislature, was the Oregon Economic Recovery Council, which consists of the department heads of the main state agencies like the Oregon Department of State Lands, the Oregon Department of Transportation, the Oregon Business Development, I believe the Fish and Wildlife Department as well. The kind of the ones that focus on land development type activities is the body that designated the North Coast Business Park as a regionally significant industrial area. I think there's 7 throughout the state. There's one in Malheur County. There's one, a couple in Salem, a couple in Portland area, and the North Coast Business Park in Clatsop County. In theory, it's supposed to allow for a higher weight of this land relative to other projects that if we seek grant funding and other types of, and preserves the industrial zoning of the land. And then the enterprise zone was completed in 2015, which is which covers the kind of myriad of properties throughout the city of Warrenton, unincorporated Clatsop County. I believe there's might be one in Seaside, and then a variety of port properties that are in the Warrenton area. And that's kind of a property tax incentive type system that's governed by the state business development group, which allows for reduction of personal or business property. So if a business buys a new machine, or if they buy a machine or new equipment, then they don't get taxed as much as they normally would if there wasn't an enterprise zone for a limited number of years. And there are requirements for the businesses to prove to the state that by buying this machine, we get this tax incentive, but we're going to bring on new jobs. It's kind of an economic development tool.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question? Mr. Summers, how much money, do we have a figure on how much money has been spent on this area up to this point?
As far as how much money has been spent on this park up to now, I don't have a good handle on that. I know Ensign Lane construction costs about $2.9 million. And then in the subsequent years since I've been here, we've probably spent a couple $100,000 with development. I know the stormwater master plan was about $100,000. The wetland mitigation plan was $100,000. The Clatsop Enterprise Zone was mostly staff time, but there's probably $10,000 to $15,000 of staff time associated with getting that. And RESIA wasn't very much. That was a nominal amount of funds. We've also got some grant funding, and we've got a couple revenues as well.
And I know that the projects like this are years of planning and carrying out, but what kind of revenues have we gotten from this area so far? Because I know with tax credits, we don't get taxes right away.
Correct. So the main source of revenue was that 2006 land sale to North Coast Retail LLC, which generated about $8 million. And then that money was deposited into an industrial revolving fund. I'm going to skip ahead. It was deposited into what's called the industrial revolving fund, which were the funds in that county fund get reinvested into the park itself. So there's no general fund money being used. There's no road fund money being used. It's this industrial revolving fund, which is the monies that are being used to make further advancements to the park. And it can also be used for other economic development initiatives, like the enterprise zone covered the North Coast Business Park, but many other properties, and it was a port and three-city type collaborative effort. So some of these funds were used to help develop that. So that's part of the economic development strategy. This is the current master plan that we're going with. The Big Beams property, which is for the parent company for Fort George Brewery. That land was sold for $700,000. Then the remainder property, I don't have a laser, but where the Costco is on that map, there was about 80 acres of land which was sold for upwards of a little under $8 million back in 2006 or 7. The sheriff's office is located, you can see on the arrow, a little bit south of 19th Street. And we got some, we're looking for an intergovernmental agreement from ODOT to fund the roadway project, which is going from Ensign Lane to the south. The curb cuts are there in the middle, currently constructed, to the south to 19th Street. One benefit of working on the south of Ensign Lane is there's water and sewer infrastructure in 19th Street. There is a little bit lacking of water and sewer infrastructure north of Ensign Lane. So we're looking to develop on the south, from Ensign Lane going south first. This is a little bit easier to do with the water sewer infrastructure already there, and then going to the north moving forward. I already talked about the Industrial Revolving Fund. It's got several little revenues in it, and the grant funding for the roadway project is about $500,000, a little bit more than that. So we've gone after an ODOT Immediate Opportunity Fund, which is kind of a public-private partnership between the Big Beams Company and the county, where the company has stated that they want to bring some jobs to the area, and the business development group of the state of Oregon and the Oregon Department of Transportation are willing to invest funding to construct transportation infrastructure to support business growth. So this is the concept of the road. It's basically a three-lane collector roadway that goes between Ensign Lane on the north, south to 19th Street. It'll connect up with the future road going further south than that, be developed by others. We're also installing water, street lighting, storm drainage in this roadway to support future development. And the total implementation cost is estimated at $1.2 million, and that has a healthy contingency built into that $1.2 million, so we don't expect it to go any greater than that. And the grant funding, I didn't put on this slide, but is about $500,000 plus from the state. So the county funds is about $700,000 from that industrial revolving fund. So next steps is the first one that we're going to complete is the roadway project connecting Ensign Lane south to 19th Street, take advantage of the ODOT grant, build some water infrastructure. And then we want to do a subsequent partition plat. I didn't put in the planning efforts on the previous slide that the county surveyor's office and we did a partition of the property because it was this one large piece of real property that was divided by roads. In this state, if you build a road on a piece of property, it doesn't officially divide the land. You still have to do a partition or a subdivision, some land division, planning, land use, and survey process that literally divide the land from a real property standpoint so we could sell the land. So we'd like to do another partition plat or two so we can actually have real chunks of property that we could list and sell. The subdivision in the future will be going to the north of Ensign Lane so we can spin off some smaller lots and develop some transportation infrastructure water and sewer infrastructure to serve lots north of Ensign Lane. And then after that, appraisal, procure a listing agent, and market real property. Now, we have any questions?
Mr. Chair. Okay, if somebody wanted to say, put a mass timber manufacturing facility in there, is this land suitable for that? I mean, what kind of people are gonna, what kind of industries do we think are going to go in here? Do we know?
It's currently zoned industrial, so a manufacturing facility is perfectly suited for this chunk of land. I'm not sure if there's any mass timber producers looking for a piece of land right now.
I'm not either, but I'm
They
hopeful.
want to contact Cam or I and to start conversations. Other types of use distribution, you know, like the big beams folks want to build a distribution center so they can grow their business. The next property that that's going to be available would be, after this roadway gets constructed, is adjacent to the animal shelter next to the new road. That would become available. It's already its own piece of land. It doesn't need to be divided at all. That would be the next one.
That's at 4.8, number 7, right?
That's
Yeah, 7, no, 6.
from the arrow with the roadway project.
Yeah, I
It's
see
right
it.
adjacent to that. That one's about 7 acres or so. It's kind of funny shaped, but there's a healthy chunk of land on it that would be suitable for a small business.
Do you know rough estimate what the price per acre is of what we have listed? You know?
Price per acre is about 100,000 or so. Maybe a little less than that. So the partition we want to do, that purple spot in the very south end, adjacent to the sheriff's office, would be divide that. The sheriff's office currently resides on a very large chunk of land. That's about 25, 30 acres. It'd be to make the purple area its own piece of land, so we can put another, you know, list that land for another use. So that's my update, and we welcome any other further questions.
Or do we still have a contract with the real estate agent that was on the
We do not.
few years back? That listing expired, or that relationship has moved on, so.
I think we would procure a new, in the interest of trying to get the best team approach for the park and the county. We would probably do a solicitation to find a new listing agent would be the appropriate way to go, what I'd recommend that we do.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Summers, I'd appreciate a copy of this. I didn't get one in our packet, so
This would be great.
if I could get in the future, I would like to have copies of the presentations. At all possible, I could keep notes on what you're saying, and it'd be a lot easier for me, and plus then think about it before you come, so. But I appreciate your update. It's great, thanks.
you're welcome. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Summers, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
With that.
Doggies.
We're going to move right along here to a proclamation. This is a proclamation we're going to issue before the commission, is to approve a proclamation declaring May 21st through 27th, 2017 as Emergency Medical Services Week. May I have I guess we're going to have a presentation from medics. Going to just, yep, there we are. Hi.
I don't know if I call it a presentation.
Right.
I'm here to add to your collection. My name is Dwayne Mullins, the General Manager for Medics Ambulance. Thanks for taking the time. It is EMS week this week, and it's EMS strong, always in service. So I came to add to your collection of little plaques. But what I really came for was to thank you for your support. Commissioners, Chairperson Lee, past commissioners, it's just great the way you support us and all the volunteer fire departments, all the agencies that try to provide EMS service to all the residents of Clatsop County. And we like to take this opportunity to thank you for that. And so it's not about the plaque, it's about your support and how much it's greatly appreciated. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much. I would like to give you the plaque, though.
All right, thank you so much.
And Mr. Chair, I would like to say to you that you represent people that are valuable, of course, to our community, but my own family has been saved by, I had a family member that was very much saved by emergency personnel, so thank you.
Glad we could do that. I've got the same family members that we did the same thing for.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we'll need a motion to approve the proclamation.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve a proclamation declaring May 21st through 27th, 2017 as Emergency Medical Services Week. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I give you the big bucks.
Thank you very much.
Now is the time for business from the public. Do we need to read, do you want me to read the proclamation? Okay,
Right.
all right.
Get ready. EMS Strong Proclamation. Whereas emergency medical services is a vital public service, and whereas the members of emergency medical service teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, and whereas emergency medical services has grown to fill a gap by providing important out-of-hospital care, including preventative medicine, follow-up care, and access to telemedicine, and whereas the emergency medical services system consists of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, emergency medical dispatchers, firefighters, police officers, educators, administrators, pre-hospital nurses, emergency physicians, trained members of the public, and other out-of-hospital medical care providers. And whereas the members of emergency medical service teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continued education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and accomplishments of emergency medical services providers by designating Emergency Medical Services Week. Now, therefore, the Board of Commissioners of Clatsop County, in recognition of this event, do hereby proclaim the week of May 21st to May 27th, 2017, as Emergency Medical Services Week. With the theme EMS Strong, Always in Service, I encourage the community to observe this week with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. Thank you.
So do we clap now, Dwayne? Thank you. It's fancy.
Very nice.
That's nice. Thank you.
Okay, this is the opportunity for anyone to give a 3-minute presentation about any item on the agenda except public hearings or any other topic of county concern that's not on the agenda. Is there anyone, we have nobody to speak tonight? Okay. Now look for a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Our first item on the business agenda today is the Charter Review Committee recommendation.
Let me kick this off, and I'm going to mostly limit my role here to introducing Dirk Rohn, who you all know, but you may recall that late last year, early this year, you appointed a Charter Review Committee to complete the 10-year review of the county charter. And the committee chairman, former Commissioner Rohn, is here tonight to present the committee's recommendations. I think we also have at least one committee member in the audience, Frank Spence, so appreciate the time that everybody put in on this, and I'm going to turn it over to Dirk.
Welcome, Dirk.
Despite a lack of changes, we did provide multiple opportunities for public comment, both here and we went to Seaside to try to reach out to areas outside of this area. So we did have some interest, and I really thank the people involved on the committee. A lot of thought went into this exercise. We went, accepted public comment and worked closely with County Manager Cameron Moore and went section by section, line by line through the charter, and I think we have a good charter. There was one minor suggestion that we made. However, that may or may not be worth it going to the vote of the public to make that change. So that's your decision. Thank you for allowing me the privilege to be a part of this process. I guess as a recent commissioner, I thought I was able to bring insight to people's concerns and questions. And we did have very in-depth conversations about lots of issues that people had concerns about. And anytime you have an opportunity to use those people, again, I would suggest you do so. A lot of really great people were on that committee. I was very impressed with what people brought to the table. And did anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Please.
First of all, I want to congratulate you both on your recent elections to the Port of Astoria. So we're honored to have you on our charter team. And thank you for all your hard work on that. The one question that came to me as I was reading this, and again, like you said, we have to decide what we're going to do with this, but and I'm wondering, the thought that came to me was, if we're talking about the filing fee, is this a place that we could insert some language about voter pamphlets of some sort, so that we have voter pamphlets for the off year special election years and the regular election years? And I just wanted to put that out there as a.
I think that's something for a budget discussion. I don't know, Cameron could probably correct me, but I don't believe that's something you need to have in the charter. This was brought up because they felt $20 wasn't very much, and when the charter was written however many years ago, that's an arbitrary number they had in there. The idea was to allow the commission the flexibility of raising that to cover some costs. You know, it could be $50, but that may not justify what it would cost to put it on the ballot. I don't know.
Yeah, I think what Dirk said is right. I think it was one of these things that people looked at and said, this maybe shouldn't, the charter maybe shouldn't be that specific. You do go through a process every year, which will be next month or July, where you establish fees, you know, for various things that the county charges fees for. And I think the thinking was this would be better served as part of that process. You'd establish it annually and say, this is our, this is going to be the filing fee this year. Dirk did briefly touch on this, but knowing that there was a recommendation, any recommendation would have to go before the voters before it could be implemented. I did do a little checking with the clerk's office, and just for your information, I guess, they did estimate that the cost to put this on the ballot would probably be somewhere between $30,000 and $32,000. You don't have to make that decision now. The date to get something on the November ballot is mid-August. So, I mean, you know, you've got plenty of time to think about what you want to do here. But there is a cost associated with putting this on the ballot.
A lot of issues that came up were, you know, I think relevant and worthy of discussion, but they just weren't relevant for this specific exercise in the spectrum of charters that counties operate under. This is less and others are a lot more, but rather than trying to create policy, this just creates an operational framework, and I think that makes it more timely or timeless. So.
I wanted to drill into the cost a little. So if we put this on a regular ballot, it's going to cost $32,000?
That's the estimate that the clerk's office gave me. They said between $30,000 and $32,000.
Is that on a standalone? Is that just on a standalone election, or is that just? Well, can't we bundle it with a regular election?
Well, it would be on the ballot with everything else, but because the county would be moving forward to put an initiative on the ballot, there is a cost associated with doing that. So.
I don't think it would hurt anybody's feelings on the Charter Review Committee if you decided to not change it.
Well, I'm looking at, you know, $32,000 to change a $20 fee to $50 or whatever every year. You know, when we have, you know, 4 elections every 6 years, this seems a little. Can't we put something on the ballot that's on a regular election year? And isn't it seems that number's high.
I mean, you're thinking like maybe 18 instead of 17, or?
Well, or even May in the primary.
We can look at that. I mean, that's your option. You have more time if you're looking at something further down the road. Again, for this November, you know, you'd have to make a decision by mid-August, but if we're going to look further down the road, you have
There's
more.
no other, is there any other elections going on in this November? Not that I'm aware of.
Not that I'm aware of right now, but.
So my thought is I didn't think it was so expensive if we bundle this, these votes with.
Yeah, it probably would be less if it was on, for instance, in November of 2018 type of
Or the
ballot.
May of 18 during the primary.
Yeah, and it depends on,
Well,
how full that ballot is.
Let's table this discussion until we get a little more information about that. And Dirk, I really want to thank you for your work on behalf of the county here. This is very, very important. The charter is a very important document, and I'm really pleased at your work. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Comments or questions? Yeah.
So thanks for being so rigorous about it, because it's the most important document we have, I think. And anytime we have this robust kind of public process, I think we all gain by that. So I appreciate the work everybody did and the praise you have for your colleagues on the committee.
Yeah, I agree, and I think a lot of work went into it, and I think it was a very thorough process, and I don't think it's a less of a process because we didn't enact any change.
Absolutely not, no, I think it's, no.
So we have a couple options here to consider. We can direct staff to schedule a public hearing on this or other proposed charter revisions, or we can review the committee recommendations and take no action. I think I would prefer, my personal choice would be to review the committee recommendations and get a little more information about how much this could cost and where we could place it. And then we could maybe, and then at a later time, we'll direct staff to schedule a possible public hearing. Does that seem sensible? Okay, by consensus, staff? There we go.
Hard to amortize $32,000 at $30 a candidate. You know, that's a long stretch.
Yeah, it just doesn't,
Yes.
yeah, but I see it's important to make these clarifications. So we'll get some more information on how much it's going to cost to run a ballot. And anything else for Dirk? Thank you, Dirk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Now we're going to move on to the vacation of portions of Electric Avenue and Ridge Road, page 17. Vance Svensson, County Surveyor. Good evening, welcome, men. Thank you.
Good evening, also members of the board, Chair Lee. My name is Vance Swedson. I'm the county surveyor, and with me we have Michael Summers, who's the public works director and the county engineer. And in this context, he's also the roadmaster. And so the issue we're bringing before you is the accepting of roadmaster's report, considering waiving the public hearing for and approving the vacation of a portion of Electric Avenue and a portion of Ridge Road. You can refer to your maps, hopefully you have those. In March, we received a petition from the owner, Richard Johnson, to vacate a portion of Electric Avenue and a portion of Ridge Road. On the petition was his notarized signature, which represents 100% of the adjoining ownership. This is an isolated parcel surrounded by county ownership or right-of-way. We received the fee. The Community Development Department has reviewed it and is in support of the vacation. And since it's not a through road or anything, it's not needed for access to any abutting properties. So in April, you, the commission, accepted the petition and ordered the roadmaster's report be prepared. Right after that, we notified all the utilities, the assessor, community development, sheriff. Responses that we received were in approval, and then those that didn't respond indicated that they really didn't have any interest in that particular right-of-way. So since then, the roadmaster report has been completed, and the county engineer believes it's in the public interest to vacate this portion of road. And so pursuant to state statute, if a public hearing may be waived, if 100% of the affected landowners sign the petition. It usually works where if it's 0 to 60, we probably won't even accept the petition. If it's between 60 and 100%. We're required by law to accept the petition. It's after 100%, it's at our discretion. To expound on this just a little bit, and you can ask more if needed, we understand and completely agree with some of the statements from some board members about the importance of things being done and having public hearings and things. However, in this case, this would be, if 100% was kind of the line here, this particular one, since it's so isolated, the roadway itself is, I think is probably the widest roadway we have in the county, the right-of-way. Even after the vacation, it will be way beyond our maximum recommended width. That in this particular case, amongst other reasons, that it would be appropriate to waive the public hearing. That public hearing usually means another month and a half. Not the least of the importance of it is the landowners are kind of have their life savings wrapped up. The buyer and the seller have their life savings kind of wrapped up in this deal, and they've had it bunched there in limbo for a long time already, and another month and a half.
So they already have like earnest money and everything down on
I'm
that?
not sure the details, but I believe they do. I think that there's a deal pending, and so they're anxious, and that is not really the reason the underlying reason we're recommending that the petition be waived. That would be, or the public hearing be waived. That would be normal anyway. But in this case, that adds a little more urgency to it if that's something that you want to factor into your decision.
Mr. Chair, I have one question.
Please.
I'm curious about what caused the fee to be what it is. I mean, what enters into the calculation of the relevant fee, please?
We, I believe in 2007, had a fee study done on all county fees. It's a factor of staff time. These really do take a lot of time. They're not, I think it's important to point out that we do not quote, sell property to the landowners like you would a piece of real fee simple owned property that the county lands department would sell. This is just to cover staff costs, which, oftentimes the research alone on this particular one that I spent, I would probably ate up quite a bit of that, which isn't always the case. But between that and then the notice to the utilities, it, believe it or not, ends up being, and it is quite high. We understand that, and that's something that the board has said could be
Very
looked
clear
at.
response. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
And I'm just learning, as you know. So one of the questions I have is when it talks about the water main utility and the power utility, that they don't have any objections. But will they need access to this land after this?
No, we did receive a response, a kind of a question and clarification from the city of Warrenton. They have a water main that runs along the physical, if you look at the map, you can kind of see the physical roadway. The main itself is not too far off of the edge of the pavement. There'll still be another 50 feet. So they have plenty of room for their water main. And then, of course, the only service would be to the house that's there, which for all houses, the service line off of the main quickly leaves, at some point it's going to leave the right of way and go on private property to your house itself or to a house itself.
So I guess I was a little, I'm sorry, I was a little confused that it's vacating part, you said that the right-of-way on the road is a little bit wider than normal.
Yeah, it was.
So it's just a portion of the right-of-way that's being vacated?
Just a portion. So if you look at the map, Ridge Road, the portion of Ridge Road technically that's vacated is the blue portion. It's 30 feet wide. The right-of-way in most of Ridge Road is 160 feet wide, which is like 2.5 times the normal average right-of-way width of 60 feet. And then you add, this is a little bit of a just because of the history of it, there was an old subdivision underneath, and that Electric Avenue was part of a real old subdivision that just coincidentally was right next to Ridge Road. So you have this other old extra 60-foot wide right of way. So you're getting out there, you know, the area in red is, you know, 100 feet or so off of the roadway itself. And so it's way beyond what we would need.
I think that kind of leads me to my last question is, how is it that the single-family dwelling was in the portion along with the septic drain? How is it that gets built onto public land?
You know,
Are there permits? How did that happen?
Right. You know, it's something that happens. It's not it's uncommon, but not unheard of in the county and anywhere in the state. In Clatsop County, there really isn't any sort of law or ordinance that says that you have to have a survey done to build a house. It's really the owner's responsibility to locate their property lines and then
Really?
their house on the property. Yeah.
Huh.
I think there's
I
some states
imagine that might lead to
yeah,
some problems.
Yeah.
Especially
yeah.
fences are a big one.
Yep. And so, you know, I always highly recommend, you know, my answer, people ask that all the time, and the answer is I would highly recommend if you're going to build a house or a structure and you don't have a lot of land and you're fairly certain you're in the middle, that it's, you know, surveys are expensive. However, depending on what you're building, they are well worth the money to do. I think the only place that I know of is the city of Cannon Beach requires some sort of a survey for a building permit there.
Is that something we could beef up on the county level to require that?
We could. Surveyors would love it. It would create a lot of work. There's some idea that it would be a good idea. However, factoring in the cost of surveys, you know, that's an added cost that it's not a bad idea. However, you know, I think some people would probably be adverse to that cost if you were going to argue, but discuss it. But it's not a bad idea on, like I said, I would highly recommend doing that if you own a small tract. But there's no
We have no mandate at this time.
mandate.
Interesting. Thank you.
This looks very straightforward to me, and I think staff did an excellent job crossing the Ts and dotting the Is here. And so I would, option one seems to be, you know, very sensible.
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the Roadmaster's report, waive the public hearing, approve the resolution and order vacating portions of Electric Avenue and Ridge Road, and authorize the board chair to sign the resolution and order.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the Roadmaster's report, waive the public hearing, approve the road vacation, and authorize the chairperson to sign the order vacating a portion of Electric Avenue and portion of Ridge Road. Seeing no further deliberations, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, staff.
All right, thank you.
Okay, our next item is the jail relocation feasibility study in contract with DL Group Architects. I think we're going to have a presentation. Sheriff had to leave, and so Commander Phillips, is that your official? Is that your official title?
Yes, Jail Commander.
Jail Commander Phillips. Welcome.
Thank you.
And David?
Good evening, Commissioners. We're here to ask for your approval on a contract with DLR Architects. I tried to go through and give, you know, kind of a Reader's Digest version of what's happened over the last few years with the jail and using DLR Architects. Back in 2011, we used them to do kind of a study of the jail and the sheriff's office. And in 2014, we went forward with them on another project, which involved, you know, doing plans, and then we did construction, and we moved the sheriff's office out of downtown along with some other parts of the sheriff's office functions. So the sheriff's office is now out in Warrenton, as you all probably know. In the jail building is just the corrections division. Earlier in the year, the North Coast Youth Authority contacted the county and was considering closing their facility. And so the county commissioner, or county manager and the sheriff, and talked to them. We ended up having DLR under contract on a separate contract, and they did some review of the existing OYA building, kind of updated what the needs are of the jail, and see if it would fit out there. We took a kind of a brief look at the facility out there, and they gave us some reports and to determine if, you know, it was even viable to go forward. So now what we're asking for is to hire them to do more detailed analysis to actually determine, you know, how to get the number of beds that the sheriff has determined he needs into that facility, you know, and the cost, and some more schematic plans, and determine, you know, if it's really viable to go, you know, along and take ownership of that building, and, you know, how much it's going to cost, and if, you know, what the funding sources would be. Matt is more here to talk about the jail functions and how it would fit out there, and but the you know, we're asking to use DLR Group. We've used them several times before. There's a bunch of state rules that says that we can sole select them if, you know, if it's in our best interest and when we follow the rules and we believe we are. So.
Thank you. I talked to Sheriff Bergen today about this, and because I wanted to just touch base with him on it, and he's like, he's all in. He thinks this is a good plan. We talked about strategy a little bit on how we want to bring this to the vote, but I think this is the best next step. And so I agree with the sheriff to move forward on this. And Commander Phillips, if you have any comments or questions, and if, you know, we have a conversation, go ahead.
I have a number of questions, actually. So the $26,000 pre-feasibility study, that's what you had authorized before, Cam?
Yeah, what we've done thus far with DLR was what we termed an initial feasibility. We just needed them to look at that facility. It's very different than our county jail, and say, does it even make sense for us to think about converting this into a county jail?
Right.
And they did come back and say, yeah, it actually does make sense. There's no problems, barriers that would prevent that from happening. And so the next step now is to get into a much more detailed architectural study, which would give us much more detailed cost estimates. You know, we don't know what those numbers are yet.
But we're talking about, what is it,
51,000.
51,000 for the next step of that feasibility study.
Correct.
My question is that as I read through this, it says that it will allow one design. This 51,000 is to look at one design. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
That's my understanding.
So-
It's to look at it, I don't know if it means that there's not more than one design option. It's just the one design would be able to, you know, move the corrections division in there, and with the goal of getting 200 beds operational out there. So.
And because there's talk also of phasing in a smaller amount of beds rather than the whole 200, isn't? See, my question is, and I can understand that this is an opportunity, and I understand that this has been a desire of the Sheriff's Department for a long time to improve that. But I just have not heard a lot of, I haven't got a lot of, haven't had a chance to have input or to have the discussion on it. For instance, you know, the first jail was built in the 70s, the one that we currently have that was built in the 70s, and things have changed a lot since the 70s. We expect if this does become the new jail that it'll stand as long as the current one, right? And as society changes and needs change, has that been brought into the discussion of what the design will be? I mean, right now, the two tours of the jail that I've taken, over 90% of the people there have drug issues.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's a different population. So, you know what I mean? There's, what are we designing for this? How is this design going to provide solutions?
So
That's what we'll find out from this next phase.
But I mean, this next phase only allows one design, and I don't know what kind of input there has been, certainly from the commissioners
No, I
or the
think
public.
when
to
they're
that.
talking about one design in architectural terms, if they were starting from scratch, and they just had open land, they would develop a number of different options. Since there's only one building there that can be converted, that's all they can look at is that building. In other words, they're not going to come up with something that says, let's tear that down, start over, and build something completely different. That's not what we ask them to look at.
Right, but I guess I would be,
Are you asking more
I have a
about the
number of
social-
questions, but perhaps you could help me with what are the future plans of the current jail? And if you might, what do you think are the 5 things that are going to, what 5 things is that's going to solve for you, and what are the 5 problems that you see with this next plan?
Well, I think that moving to a larger facility would address several of the problems we have. And just on the surface, we would be improving community safety. We'd be improving the safety of our staff because our current building is very inefficient. We have to do most of the monitoring by cameras. And it'd also be a lot safer for the inmates. And we would have an opportunity to provide meaningful programs if we had the space. And we wouldn't be forced to release so many people. And we might actually have a chance for probation officers to impose sanctions and that we could hold sentenced people for their entire sentence, which we are currently unable to do when we use alternative sanctions.
So a sentence means a sentence.
Right. So currently, if we don't have pre-classification housing, people are arrested and they come in and they go immediately into the general population, and we don't have the opportunity to evaluate them. We don't have very many options for our changing population needs. Just the pure number doesn't tell you what the classification is. We have only one room for sick people. And so if we have more than one, we'll have to clear out additional beds to house that person. That takes our jail population down.
So you're hoping to have more space for if there's more than one person ill, that they would be able to be treated at the jail?
Absolutely. And there's many problems, you know, with the small facility, and that we're not able to give the best options for our inmates.
Would there be any possibility, I know that there's ongoing work on getting secure beds for people that are suffering a mental health crisis. Would there be any space out there for something like that?
Well, we're not mental health treatment providers.
Except that, and de facto.
Except that the reality is that's where many people with mental health issues come, is to our jail. And our current housing situation is not the best for people suffering from mental illness. And if we could have more space for them and more options on where to house them, that would be very much in their benefit.
Is that something that's discussed in this design? Of having
Yes.
a different setup so that it is more comfortable for something like that?
Absolutely.
The other thing is, what about before their sentence with that ankle monitors, and then they have the skin things for it, if they're using alcohol, that possibly people could continue their being observed or being monitored in the community rather than being in jail. Is that something that's been thought of for this new facility?
Yes, actually, we have 2 positions that I think were approved on the budget. One is a pretrial release officer. I am currently...
It's in the proposed FY 17-18
I remember
budget.
that, yeah.
And then also an alternative custody deputy to do the supervision end of that. So yes, I'm working with Judge Brownhill, DA Marquis, Kirk Wintermute from the Defense Bar, and we're working on that pretrial release officer program. But that will not address the housing needs of the people that we do have.
Right.
You know, I mean, it really won't address the issues that are at the jail that we will have to continue to run.
Well, the other question that I'm wondering what you thought about this is that I know that it's quite a much longer distance to the courthouse, and right now people can just walk across to the courthouse. So that's going to entail more driving of folks. you know, is that going to be part of this, the increased vehicles or manpower, or are you going to get like perhaps a video, a satellite courthouse out there, or is that part of the design, or? I mean, that is an issue, particularly with, I mean, I just drove out there today. I mean, just the traffic alone in the summertime, that's going to create a problem, isn't it?
I don't know.
There's a little bit of an offset there in two ways. One is this actually is next to the sheriff's office, so it's not.
Right, but it's not next to the courthouse.
It'll be closer for sheriff's personnel. And actually, there's already capability at this facility to do video arraignment, for instance. That's one of the pluses about this facility is within the last 2 years, they significantly upgraded all the audio-video capabilities. And in fact, OYA told me that if we don't take the facility, they'll probably take all that stuff out and take it with them. But if we take the facility, they might be kind enough to leave that. And I'm guessing that's probably $1 million or so worth of equipment.
Well, I mean, I think that's great, and it would be a great gift if that's the way it works out. But I guess what I want to know is that designed in part of this new, is that something that's been thought of? I don't have a list of all the pluses and minuses, you know.
Necessarily the design of the new facility, but we would have one of our deputies be the transport deputy for the court for the day, and we would want to have some sort of secure location for the people that are going to court during the day.
I mean, you folks are tasked with taking care of a diverse population with a lot of needs and a lot of responsibility. And I know that you want to do the best job you can. I just would like to have some input on, and some community input on what's the best way to look at this? What are you seeing? What would you like? What would your dream wish be? What are the things that you're concerned about? You know.
And I think that's really important, but we're not even at a point yet where we know whether we're interested in moving forward with this. We're just trying to find that out at this point. And if we decide that maybe this is a potential location for a new jail, I think we need to have that broad community conversation.
Absolutely, and this is just the beginning of that process.
So that when they say the one design, they're just talking because they have just one building? It's not that they're limiting them to one, because one design, that seems like a kind of...
They can only work with what they have, which is one design of a building.
Have you been to the facility?
I haven't been to the facility
Well, the
yet,
neat
no,
thing about
because
that
the
facility
budget
is
meeting went on for 9 hours, so I wasn't able to make it
The beauty
out
of
there.
that facility is it's the flexibility of the structure to expand. It was designed in a way that it's easy to expand out, because in a kind of a pod type affair, right?
Yes.
And so basically, it's a very flexible building. I think this is the best opportunity I've seen and the closest that we've gotten to solving this problem that's been a problem here for over 10 years.
Oh, I'm not saying it's not an opportunity, but I know that the current jail was built with the understanding that they could go up, and that never happened. And so, and what is going to happen with this facility, the last discussion we had about that, because of seismic concerns, there are other issues. What are we going to do with that building? I haven't heard a discussion about that. Is that going to be part of this assessment, or?
It's probably going to end up like the Dairy Gold building.
Well, one thing I would like with this OA facility is that it's not, currently our parking lot isn't part of the tsunami inundation zone, and we have an active landslide not even a block from us. You walk out the Sally Port door and you look at it. How
does Warrenton fit into that tsunami area?
We're good there.
Are we?
Oh, yeah. That property is right above the
Inundation.
inundation zone.
Yeah.
And that's one of the key, that's a very important part of this. The building actually is like Commander Phillips said, is seismically unstable. It's got in a slide zone, and there's a creek that runs underneath it.
Another thing with this current jail is basically the oldest design. It's called linear indirect supervision. And so that is very staff intensive. And if we were to go up a floor, we'd be looking at, I mean, maybe not quite doubling our staff, but in order to properly and legally monitor the inmates, it'd be very much more staff intensive, which over time is more expensive than just the capital outlay for a building.
Yeah, and I think it's important until we know that the facility is of interest and we have some kind of design that we think's work for us, once we have that, then you would develop your operational plan, you know, what your staffing and all that would look like. So that's not part of an architectural study. The architectural study is, you know, here's what you can do with that building and here's how much it would cost you.
But
so
I mean,
once we know that, though, we have to work on the operational side.
I just think it's also important to have a clear idea of what the goals are, so the architect can look and see what's possible. Is there going to be an area for a satellite courthouse? Is there going to be an area for holding? I mean, I think those. I'm interested in that because it's such a big issue for our county, and it's such an important one that I would like to learn more about it and have more input, because there's a lot of people that have a lot of ideas, and it has been voted down twice. So I think it's important that we get public support for this.
Completely agree,
Yeah.
and I think we should go forward with this contract and entertain a motion to do so.
Chair Lee, I move to authorize the county manager to sign a contract with DLR Group, Inc. in the amount of $51,000 and authorize the county manager to sign contract amendments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to authorize the county manager to sign a contract with DLR Group Incorporated in the amount of $51,000, authorize the county manager to sign the contract amendments. Seeing no further deliberations, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Our final item on the business agenda tonight is the County Fair Storage Building Project Contract. Page 37. Let's see here.
Good evening. Thank you. Kathy Matnan, Clatsop County Fair and Expo Manager, and I have Dave Diefenbach with me, who assisted with making sure that we had the complete paperwork and documents needed to present this item to you. So the project that we are requesting approval for is a replacement of a storage building on our fairgrounds, a building that is much need of improvement. It's not a secure place for storage for our maintenance equipment and tools. It has a lot of safety concerns because of how old and dilapidated it is, and it's basically unsightly. So we followed the process required to get bids from companies who would be interested, or construction companies who would be interested in performing the project. And on Friday, May 19th, we received three bids, as you probably have in front of you. Kinney & Sons for a total of $272,541. Coastline Roofing and Constructions for $253,000. And Heligso Construction for $219,491. All three of the companies presented all of the required paperwork. We would respectfully request that you approve that we enter into a contract with Heligso, who happens to be the lowest bid, and we have received references that they're a reputable company and are a good company in general to work with, have done county projects previously. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, you did a good job.
Thank
I
you.
have a question. Well, good. It's always good when we improve the county fair, right? So on page 111 of our board packet,
Excuse me, what page were you looking at?
111,
I can answer this. Or you-
just a couple, I know, I'll make this easy, I promise.
I'm there, go ahead.
No fire sprinkler system required. I thought, it may not be code, but I was curious that you would
Fire
want to.
sprinklers are, fire sprinklers are required based on, the building codes.
Yeah.
And it's based on what you're planning on using for the building for, how big the building is, and how far it is away from other structures. And so in this instance, it doesn't sound like it's needed or required by code. And we have lots of buildings. I mean, our two main buildings over here don't have fire sprinklers. It's just, based on code and the current code when it was built. And
Okay, in my mind, that means anything that's stored in there is dispensable, but that's just how it occurs to me.
it doesn't mean it's not
sure.
dispensable.
Is it-
just- means that you don't need to have a fire sprinkler system, you know.
Okay, okay, thanks for the correction. So the other thing, on the same page, wind up to 135 miles an hour.
That's true.
We've been seeing some increased storm ferocity based on climate change. I just wonder, I mean, that's probably code 2.
135 miles an hour, you know, a few years ago, the wind code here was 90 miles an hour, and then it went up to 110.
Okay.
And then went up to 135. I mean, if you look at the wind maps for Oregon, we're at the highest amount that's required by code. And that's, you know, we may get gusts over that, you know, hardly ever, but, you know, if you're designed for 135 miles an hour, you know, engineers have, you know, factors of, you know, safety in there, so it's going to be way higher than that.
Thank you for your reassurance on those issues. On the next page, 112, the siding. You know, having been on the NOHA end of things and looking at how, you know, I'm just a little gun shy on this stuff. We've had the experience as a board of dealing with construction that wasn't handled properly, and I just am compelled to ask the question.
Sure. Hopefully we can answer.
It's good?
Yes. What was the question?
Well,
We had a big problem with hardy board on a project.
Oh.
Yeah, and so that was the commissioner's concern.
yeah, it was the material and it was the way it was installed. So I just want to be clear that we're not falling short of our responsibilities. when
Hardy
stuff-
board, you know, it's a manufacturer, that's a brand. There's other brands that do the same thing. It's like a concrete board. If it's installed correctly, painted and everything, it's fine, you know. They just, you know, example, up at Coast Guard Housing, they just took off all the vinyl siding and replaced it all with hardy panel.
Okay. And we have contractors who know how to do it, so that was the issue too.
Yes, we hope so.
Okay, good, thanks.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
I'm just wondering, now that we're part of the Blue Sky family, where are the solar panels on this? I mean, solar panels have gone down. It just would be swell if we had, you know what I'm saying?
I wasn't involved in that part of the project.
Was it just not thought of? I mean, I'm just thinking in the future that I would love to see new buildings to include some kind of alternative energy source. You know, my sister lives, one of my sisters lives on a ranch, and they run their organization with solar power. So I noticed the electric hookup, and that's when I thought, well, why? Too bad they can't take care of this building with solar power. I just wondered a comment on that.
I know that Pacific Power, is that the correct?
Yeah.
Electrical company made a presentation on the program, and I had just coincidentally spoken to the person who was here making the presentation. She told me that that was happening, and that the fairgrounds was one of the considerations that they had suggested that make use of that program.
Because they offer rebates.
Nobody's contacted me yet to partake of any of that. We'd love to be involved in it, or as far as I'm concerned, I would like to hear about what the involvement of that would be and what our benefits would be, so.
So is that something we connect people with?
That's a good point. Is the fairground part of the Blue Sky through the county, or is the fairgrounds have a separate contract with Pacific Power? Do you know?
No, they're actually through the county. The question, if you remember right, for achieving certain goals, then Pacific Power would provide us with a solar panel. So we're not quite there yet, but assuming that we actually get that solar panel, it would seem to me the fairgrounds would be a great place to look at putting
Absolutely.
it, but we also have other county facilities as well.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's good because it's visible and that's great.
It's not built yet, so let's keep talking about this and see if we can make something happen.
All right, looking for a motion to approve the ask.
Mr. Chair, I move to authorize the county manager to sign a contract with Heligso Construction Company in the amount of $219,491 to construct the storage building at the fair, and authorize the county manager to sign contract amendments.
I'm sorry, before we do that, we talked about the solar panels. Do we need to amend the contract to include that? Or is that something that,
Have a price to even add those yet.
We,
right, but I know in the comprehensive, the plan the comprehensive plan or whatever that I was reading, it was saying that new buildings, they wanted to have some deference
but
to solar.
This was a formal bid process, so in order to do that, we'd have to start the whole process all over. We'd have to build solar panels into the bid specs. We'd have to send those back out and get bids again. So,
Well, I don't want to do that, but I would like in the future to perhaps have that as considered, and maybe there's something we can do with
yeah,
this
all you're
building.
doing here is approving the contract with the construction company to construct this building.
Right, this is the first time I've seen this contract, so.
Yeah, I apologize for that.
okay. Did we get through that motion?
I moved. I didn't get a
Second.
We have a motion and a second to authorize the county manager to sign a contract with Select Contract for the amount of 219, what was the fine on that? 219 what?
491.
219, 491, and authorize the county manager to sign the contract amendments. Seeing no further deliberations, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, staff.
Thank you, and I do have an introduction I'd like to quickly make, if you would allow me
please.
to do that. We have a newly hired a newly hired maintenance supervisor at our facility. His name is John Lewis. He comes to us with a construction background.
Welcome aboard, John.
He's a Clatsop County resident. We're real thrilled to have him. We're going to make use of his construction abilities and a lot of other experience that he has. So just wanted you to meet him.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Excuse me, what's your official job again?
Maintenance supervisor.
Maintenance supervisor.
Yep.
Great. Well, welcome aboard.
All right, thank you.
Any
And
other
thank you.
questions or comments for?
What brought you to the fairgrounds?
I actually owned Classic Construction prior to this, and they were looking to redo the dairy barn out there and kind of set it up for some different venues, and I went out to give them an estimate, and I never left.
All right.
Well, welcome aboard.
Thank you so much.
Okay. This is a continuation of public hearing on ordinance 17-02, replacing ordinance 16-03 and ordinance adopting legislative text amendments to the Clatsop County Comprehensive Plan and Land and Water Development and Use Ordinance number 80-14 regarding the Southwest Coastal Citizens Advisory Committee, the Arch Cape Rural Community, and additional requirements for citizen involvement countywide, and declaring an emergency.
Nope.
Is that that's not the right language there? The final sentence on declaring an emergency, is that right?
No, that should have been taken from
That-
out
that
of your
should have been
script.
struck. Well,
Right.
I crossed it out just as I got to it. Is there any additional information from staff?
Thank you, Chair Lee, Chris Crane, Special County Counsel. As you know, this was approved on first reading 2 weeks ago, so it's back for second reading tonight. There's an updated staff report in your packet at page 117 that reflects the testimony from 2 weeks ago. Updated ordinance at page 128 of the packet. And the ordinance has been updated to remove the emergency clause from 2 weeks ago and to insert an effective date clause. But I would note that we missed one thing when we were doing the updated ordinance. On the last page of your packet, page 3 of the ordinance, it still says the findings of the staff report dated May 3rd, 2017, and that should be amended to read May 15. That's the updated staff report that's in your packet in front of you. So the
So if we do a motion, we'll just add that as amended into the.
That's correct.
Motion, okay.
That's correct. So it's clear the ordinance is clear on what staff report it's adopting. There were 3 new emails that were received since the last meeting that I believe have been distributed to you. 2 of them expressed general support for the commission, for the Arch Cape Committee, and opposed the amendment. The third is from Linda Eierman, and she makes a number of points, a couple of which I want to address very briefly. The first is that the new ordinance should have been sent back through the Southwest Coastal Citizens Advisory Committee, but there's no legal requirement that you do so. It's simply been a continuation of the same proceeding that began with the Southwest Citizens Coastal Advisory Committee a year and a half ago, and the ordinance has been updated with a new number consistent with your numbering protocol at the county. Otherwise, no material changes, and in any event, there's no legal requirement that says the county can't change it. She says that the ordinance takes away rights from all Clatsop County citizens, but doesn't say how or in what fashion or where these rights exist and how the amendments affect them, and raises concern about notice. And I can assure you that after the Luber remand, we have been through all of the notice procedures, and we're good with all of the notice requirements. Again, asserts that the board should be allowed, or the committee should be allowed to continue as long as it continues to meet. That's addressed in the findings. Takes issue with some of the findings regarding the advisory nature of the committee, compliance with quasi-judicial proceedings, and potential liability. Those issues have all been extensively vetted through multiple public hearings, hundreds of pages in the record, and most important, they're specifically addressed in the findings. And then concerned that Clatsop County citizens are not being heard, but again, there have been multiple hearings, hours of testimony, lots of information submitted into the record, so we believe there's been ample opportunity for citizens to participate. That's all the new testimony we have. You did not close the record 2 weeks ago, so you may take testimony tonight if you wish, as long as everybody signed up, and that's all I have.
All right, thank you for the staff report. Now we move to a time where, do any of the commissioners have questions for staff? Seeing none?
Well, I have to think about it. Okay, so here's the deal. These are my neighbors. They're concerned about citizen participation, so am I. They're concerned about neighborhood livability, so am I. I've thought a lot about this, listened to a whole lot of people, and thought and thought and thought. It occurred to me that my intention as a commissioner was to keep Southwest, to keep the Citizen Advisory Committee function working. I want to maintain the workability of citizen participation and the protection and input about neighborhood livability. In my mind, when we amended the ordinance, we did preserve and protect citizen participation and the protections of neighborhood livability.
And I would say enhanced it in many ways. I agree.
Okay, so we enhanced it not just for the Arch Cape neighbors, but for people throughout the county.
That's correct.
Okay, so that was my intention.
Could you clarify how you enhanced it, please?
So in several places, the code now requires developers for a long list of types of developments have to go first to the neighborhood and hold a neighborhood meeting, you know, in the church basement, in the local high school, in some place where they can address, where people can come and find out what the developer is proposing, provide comments, and then the developer has to take notes and provide an attendance sheet and a list of notes from what happened at that meeting with their application. So they've got to go out and meet in the community first, and that's county-wide. We now have specific procedures or regulations that allow us to recognize neighborhood associations, community groups, and provide them with specific notice of any land use applications in their area. Increased the added requirement for posting land use applications on the county website. And I can't remember the specifics, but I think we added that a property that's proposed for development have to have more signs actually along the right-of-way. We beefed up the sign requirement. So all of those are designed to increase public awareness of what's going on in your neighborhood and provide additional opportunities for people to be engaged in the process.
If I could continue.
I'm sorry, Leanne.
No, it's okay. I just want to make, you're done, right? Okay, for now. I just wasn't done. Okay. So we protected and preserved and even expanded what was good about this. There are some neighbors who are, as you know, passionately devoted to carrying forward the auspices under which these activities occur. So in my mind, what we did as a body was to change the auspices. Which organization is able to do this? Is that accurate?
That's correct. There's nothing that prohibits the same people who meet now from continuing to meet and review every land use application in their area and provide comments to the planning director and the county and engage the county process at every level. They're simply not doing it. Their meetings aren't staffed by the county, and they're not under the auspices of the county. They're not operating as a county function. They're operating as private citizens, but doing exactly the same things they would be doing otherwise.
Okay, so the third point, what was taken away because people do feel a loss, was not only the change of the auspices, but was the loss of the quasi-judicial authority. Was there anything else that you can see that was lost except that quasi-judicial authority?
There are some convenience matters. So as an official county function, staff would provide a packet for their meetings just the way we do now. So if they want to meet to discuss a proposed development in the Arch Cape area, they'd have to go on the county website and download the documents instead of having them compiled and handed to them by county staff. At least one of the members mentioned that to me as a concern, and I simply can't help them with that. I mean,
Okay, so a couple of losses, because here's the thing, I know people are passionately devoted, and the thing that concerned me was presenting it as if we had taken away Arch Cape Design Review and destroyed it and not substituted something else that worked better for more people, and really the loss of the quasi-judicial authority seems to me to be the nexus of the issue that the remaining partisans have. Does that seem like an accurate?
And this may seem hypothetical, but I think one of the real gains is that as a county body, you can't advocate for your decision. So for example, the Planning Commission can't, if they make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, they don't get to come and advocate for why their decision was right and why you should follow it. And if you make a different decision, they're not going to appeal you to the Land Use Board of Appeals because they're a function of the county and they have to respect the hierarchy of county authority. The Planning Commission is subordinate to the Board of County Commissioners. The Arch Cape Committee is subordinate to the Planning Commission. By removing them from that subordinate relationship, they can actually advocate now to a much greater extent than they could have before.
That's an important point.
So let me just say that to make sure, because I think you're right about that. So in spite of the perceived loss of the quasi-judicial authority and the staff support, the offsetting gain is that they have a clearer and more direct route to legal recourse.
They could be much more of an advocate for what they believe in than is the case if they're operating simply as a county review body.
A much more effective advocate. That's a lovely phrase.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I have no more questions.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay. Seeing that there's some members here, I was considering not having any more public testimony, but I am going to allow public testimony.
Good.
I see some folks that are here.
Good.
So is there anybody that would, if there's any public testimony, if you wish to testify, please come forward, give your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. Is there any folks that would like to come up and speak again? Come on up. And again, I would ask you to adhere to the 3-minute rule. And welcome. Please state your name and address for the records, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Jim Jensvold. I live in Arch Cape, Jensvold, 80030 Pacific Road. I think one of the things we did lose here is we lost a good relationship between the commissioners and the residents because of the way this was handled. I think the county could have gotten pretty much everything they wanted if they would have come to us respectfully and said, let's work this out together, neighbor to neighbor, like on the heading of the paper that you have there, with respect, which I don't think existed in this case. So I think that's what we lost. I've seen my friends, my neighbors, people I admire, people I respect, who have volunteered to serve their community, to serve their county, being criticized in these chambers and in the press, being referred to, these are my words, power-hungry bullies. I don't think that's true. At one point, these people were valued. In the hallway out there, 2012, there's the name of a person who is on the County Award for Volunteer of the Year for serving on this committee that you would like to eradicate. So I think that these characterizations of people in the community and people on the committee are inaccurate, they're insensitive, and they are insulting also. We're being accused of being not good neighbors. And 2 weeks ago in these chambers, it was suggested that our recourse is to go personally and inform on our neighbors for illegal building. I don't think that's neighborly. Even if you think there's a good substitute, like you said, Commissioner, neighborhood, do these exist now? These neighborhood councils, homeowners association, do they exist now? Do we know how to set them up? In the 15 months that this has been an issue, has the county helped us set these up? If you would have come to us and said, this is the solution, let's work together, it could have happened. I think you've really wasted a lot of goodwill with our community by treating the community the way it's been treated. So I ask you, why don't you consider tabling this issue, coming together with the people in the community. I've never served on that committee, but I'm a homeowner and I own undeveloped residential property. I want to be a good neighbor. I want to work with these people to keep the quality of livability in the community the same. Why can't we work together? That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Good evening. State your name and address for the record, please. Welcome.
My name is Theodore Lundy, and I live here in town at 2553 Grand, and I have a house in Arch Cape. I've served on the committee for, well, 3 terms, and I've been the chairman for the past couple terms. I started the 3rd term as chairman just now. I've found this whole experience to be deeply upsetting. I've found the vilification of our committee, people that are volunteers. The previous gentleman made it very clear. People that get nothing out of being in this committee, serving on a monthly basis to try to help the homeowners in the community get a word in about how the neighborhood is developing or how the community is developing. And we have received some pretty horrendous statements about what we do and what we're there for. I just find that there's a film that comes to mind, and it's about a Japanese man that worked his whole life in some civil group, and their whole thing was to try to shunt the responsibility of dealing with the citizens. And he finally said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do it and help them. It was this kind of an experience that I had, that it's the county trying to make things simpler for themselves. They don't have to go down to Arch Cape. The community in Arch Cape has to organize themselves. They have to put together these meetings. They have to schedule a meeting hall. They have to do all the communications in order to make their feelings felt. Whereas before, we had a regular meeting, everybody knew when it was going to be. One more point, and that is that we had a meeting, I'm trying to remember, it was probably 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, maybe even more, in which, when this first came up, in which we were invited the public to come and speak their mind about how they felt about disbanding the Citizens Review Committee. And it was the largest group we've ever had. We met at the fire hall down in Arch Cape. There were probably, I would guess, 40 people there. And they spoke, not all of them spoke, but as each one spoke supporting the committee, the applause was pretty much universal. There were 2 individuals that stood up and spoke against the committee, saying it was unnecessary. But the support of the community was overwhelming and heartwarming, and I felt nothing of that in this whole process. No recognition of the community's desire to maintain it, just the desire to get rid of it.
Thank you for your testimony, sir. Is there any more public testimony tonight? Good evening. State your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Mike Manzulli, 80285 Woodland Heights, Arch Cape. I just wanted to alert you first that there's in your inboxes, there is a email from Oregon Coastal Alliance's attorney, Sean Malone. It came in before this hearing, so it should be accepted as onto the record. The gist of it is that you actually changed some of the substantive information when you switch from 1603 to 1702, and he questions whether you have to go through the whole process again. So what I heard about this it's great that the rest of the county is going to have this additional notification and ability to comment that maybe they didn't have in the past, and that's a plus, great. But for Arch Cape, it's a big minus what we're getting, because we were your liaison. We were not just some group. We were your liaison. We worked with you. So you're taking that away. We could always be advocates. Any person in the public can find a legal remedy, can advocate their cause. That's not something new. That's always been there. You're taking something away. There's been not one lawsuit against the county for any of the CAC's actions. There is no evidence in the record of the CAC actually failing to follow procedure. Behind closed doors, county council and staff have done just like a terrific job convincing you that the CAC is a liability nightmare. I believe the opposite is true. As I've expressed before, the CAC has caught countless county mistakes. Removing the CAC removes a layer of protection for the county. Without the CAC, these staff mistakes will inevitably end up in land use decisions. What that means is if you remove the CAC, they're not there to help you with preliminary hearings. These decisions will have inaccuracies because the county doesn't understand Arch Cape's ordinances like the community does, unfortunately, and you will result in more LUBA appeals. And that's not a threat. That's just my opinion, is that I do believe you're going to have more mistakes and they're going to end up in LUBA instead of being taken care of amongst the community and the county working together. At the last CAC meeting, County Council stated on the record that he is not concerned with LUBA as if the cost is small potatoes to the county. What he's concerned about is ADA and procedural liability. These are interesting words from someone who has just made thousands of dollars off the county, losing 2 LUBA appeals, after advising the county to 1, amend the comprehensive plan without a public hearing, and 2, to do it again without proper public notice. The saddest part of this all is that the 2 LUBA appeals, as Jim kind of mentioned, could have been avoided if the county had simply listened to the 200 plus supporters. This town has 100 residents, 200 supporters for this organization. And if you had listened to that petition, if you'd listened to your community members and met and worked with us, we could have avoided all this. So my time is up, but I'm asking you again, work with us. This is solvable. You don't eliminate a 40-year institution. Why would you want that on your record? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no more public testimony, I'm going to move to close public hearing. I'll entertain a motion to amend Ordinance 1702 to delete on the second page, there's a typo. And so in part of the motion, to amend 1702 to delete 3 and insert 15, and to adopt Ordinance 17 as amended, adopting a legislative text amendments to the Conservative Plan and Land and Water Development and Use Ordinance 80-14, and to conduct the second reading by title only.
I'm a little confused about that. So there's no date in the recommended motion, but, so it should be added?
No, it's a typo.
Yeah, if you look at
yeah,
it's page 3 of the ordinance, section 1. the last page, page 130 of your packet.
Right.
The ordinance reads, "The Board of County Commissioners of Clatsop County ordains as follows. Section 1, the findings of the staff report dated May 3rd, 2017." That should be May 15th.
Right.
So that, yeah.
But does that affect the reading of the motion?
It did, because I inserted the language in there that says to amend ordinance 72 to delete 3 and insert 15.
Yeah, so the motion was to delete 3, insert 15, then approve the ordinance as amended.
Okay. But it's all one motion?
It's all one motion. You want me to see where, basically, with this motion?
I see what you mean, but it's hard to read when we don't have it
understand.
before.
I see that.
We're going to, I move to adopt and amend
Yeah, okay, never mind.
ordinance 72 with the changing 3 to 15
Okay.
on the dates.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right, council?
That's correct. Right.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that the record is clear what staff report the
Right.
commission is adopting. Not the 2-week-old staff report, but the current staff report.
Okay. Okay, Chair Lee, I move to adopt and amend the changes from May 3rd to May 15th, 2017, adopting legislative text amendments to the comprehensive plan and land and water development and use ordinance 80-14, and to conduct the second reading by title only.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move to adopt and amend ordinance 1702, changing May 3rd to May 15th, adopting legislative text amendments to the conservative plan and land and water development use ordinance 8014, and to conduct the second reading by title only. Is there any further deliberations? Seeing no further deliberations, we'll take a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed?
No, and I have a statement to read. I was not on the...
Motion carries. The motion carries. You can read your statement in commissioners' reports. Is that okay?
Why wouldn't I read it now?
Okay, fine. The motion carries 3-1. You can read your statement.
I was not on the board when the original decision was made. However, after reviewing this issue, I do not agree with it. When you have hundreds of signatures on a petition, a huge public reaction, with oral and written testimony given to the Board of Commissioners, people vowing to keep working to save a committee that has been continuously functioning for 4 decades, it seems a possible solution would be to get the parties together in a room with a mediator, find out what will work. Dissolving this without the support of the constituents involved will have continuing political costs for the county, as well as affecting the quality of life for the citizens living in the area. This has gone to LUBA twice and costing the county tens of thousands of dollars. Instead of asking, why isn't this working, the strategy was to continue with the same plan and the same attorney. I think this is more than a technicality problem. I think this is a people problem. I wish we could resolve this another way. A creative solution would be to try mediation. Was former Commissioner Birkby contacted on this matter? She lives in the area. She served as the county liaison to the committee. I know she testified in front of the board. Was she invited to the meeting to hear her input? To a meeting to hear her input? I believe in building resilience by encouraging citizens' involvement in their government. I think this does the opposite. And I think the former comprehensive plan encouraged citizen involvement, and I think this is a mistake.
Okay, now we're going to move on to commissioners' reports. Commissioner Thompson?
Well, I really appreciate that we've had a robust discussion and we've explored differences of opinion. What I'd like to see, I agree with a lot of what Commissioner Sullivan has said about having more robust public discussions. I think that would be a good idea. I think timber policy, forestry policy would be one of those. I think it would be a good idea to have timber folk and environmental folk and forestry folk all sitting around a table working to develop collaborative solutions, not just to have a policy that reflects one point of view. So I hope that you're as flexible when it comes to a position that's dear to your heart as well. I went to the National League of Cities, not on the county nickel, but it was great because it was in Indianapolis, Indiana. They talked, I went to a lot of the sessions. One talked about organizational health. They talked about integrity, being whole, consistent, and complete, being a smart and healthy organization. I think that we can do better in that regard. I'd like to have continuing conversations about how the commissioners work together and work with our community members so that we can have more public input and more mediated discussions, not with a formal mediator, but among ourselves as good people who want to move from our vision into mission and into goals. So I'd like to see that. The American Red Cross is live and well in Clatsop County. When Dwayne Mullins was here talking about how individual citizens participate in helping each other stay alive, I'd just like to remind folks that the Red Cross has life-saving skill opportunity sessions to have so you can learn how to save people's lives. And if you don't know how to do it, staying alive. 100 beats a minute, you don't have to put your mouth on anybody else's mouth. If you just do the chest compression, that keeps the heart beating. So the first thing to do is have somebody call 911, and the second thing to do is to link and then push with the heel of your hand. It's going to be tougher for smaller people, but we can hope that we'll make a difference. I've just spent the last 3 days at LEPC, the local emergency planning committees. There's been a conference in Seaside of the State Emergency Response Commission. This is about hazardous materials. Oregon has more stringent and far-reaching laws about our people's right to know about hazardous materials in our county. But the thing that riveted my attention was when Tim Gablehouse from Colorado said, and your county board of commissioners, your governing body, has a legal responsibility to pay attention to this. I went, oops, legal liability, time to pay more attention, right? Because we always pay attention. So I hope that we can have reports from our county emergency manager about our local emergency planning committee, because it's vitally important not only to look to the well-being of our citizens throughout the county, but also to deal with the board's legal responsibilities in that regard. Cedar meeting was happening. You heard about the election of the port commissioners. We've now got what I think will be a more functional economic engine. I hope that we as a body work more proactively and significantly, I'm going to say, with our port commission to do ecologically sustainable economic development in Clatsop County. That's enough for now.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to respond. It is my understanding that my position on the FTLAC to be the forest representative for Clatsop County, I am advocating for the citizens of Clatsop County. This is not a personal agenda on my part. I am advocating for what the citizens believe and what they have shown over many years, that we believe in healthy forests, that we believe in the greatest permanent value. So this is not a personal thing for me. This is something that I'm taking on behalf of the citizens. And I'm sure that you understand that also, Commissioner Thompson. So The other thing is the current FDLC meeting that had been changed from the end of May to June 2nd has just also been canceled. So we've had one FDLC meeting this year. Currently, as you know, we got the very happy news that the Elliott Forest has been saved. And part of that whole thing is, well, it's in the process, but is the movement towards a habitat conservation plan, HCP. And Clatsop County is on record for supporting that, and that's something I will continue to work towards because we do not have, we don't have a lot, there's not unanimous support for that on the FTLC. And so that's something that I will advocate for because I know that that's what we believe in here. The Northwest Senior Disability Services, the board that I serve on, we had the budget committee meeting last week. Tomorrow we have another meeting. And I also went to the county college this past weekend, and we worked on economic development, which I found very informative. And then Cam will give us some more detail during his report, but we are moving forward on the recycling for District 4. They're working on the language, which is a good thing because the people out there have been waiting for a long time to get this back up and running, and so we're very close, and I'm looking forward to when we can announce that that will be completed. Thank you.
Commissioner Nebaker.
Thank you. Okay, I attended the May Human Services meeting, advisory council meeting. There was a presentation by CASA, a few facts that I wasn't aware of, so I'll share those. Most foster children are in care for 18 months, that's the average. And CASA makes sure that those kids have advocacy for the court systems. However, and they spend about 6 hours on average per month to each child, but and the time commitment varies according to the individual CASA volunteer, but there's 30 hours required for training, and the CASA volunteers are screened and interviewed, but 30% of our foster children are without a CASA assigned volunteer. So while Clatsop County has a strong program, we need more. We also need more foster homes. The food bank. 85 to 95% of the food for the food bank comes from outside the county. 70 to 80,000 volunteer hours were logged. 1.5 million meals were given last year. That's a lot. Today, 55 to 58% of food is fresh or frozen. That's a big improvement. 5 to 6,000, it's my understanding though, there is a shortage of protein. 5 to 6,000 pounds of carrots will be harvested at the food bank garden this year. 600,000 to 700,000 pounds of food will be distributed this year. 8,000 to 9,000 produce food boxes will be distributed. 24,000 to 26,000 emergency boxes will be distributed. Astoria, Warrenton, Seaside, and now Cannon Beach will have produce sites. They'll be set up on the streets so people can come and the truck will cycle through those areas once a week. So 1,000 to 1,100 people each week come for food. And weekend backpack programs will start at all the schools this year. I don't know if you all saw the op-ed in the Daily Astorian or the editorial about the arts. And I was really happy to see that we score very high in the nation, and our economy depends much more on the arts than most people realize. So I was happy to see that. That's it.
Okay, well, I've got a few things here. First off, I hope y'all can make it out to Senator Merkley's town hall on Sunday, because at noon, we will have an opportunity to, elected officials from around the county will have an opportunity to sit with Merkley and talk about some of the issues that have concerned. And I'm really proud of Senator Wyden and Merkley and the way they've really represented Oregons and have spoke to the current budget that President Trump's administration is trying to move forward. Attended the Oregon Coastal Zone Management Association legislative meeting in Salem on Monday. We had a fair good turnout. Some of the conversations working on hard and bringing cities and ports in, getting some, strengthening our dues paying members. Senator Johnson, Senator Roblin attended and contributed to a lively discussion. We had some great presentations. One of the most, you could hear a pin drop when this conversation was going on. And we had a presentation by the, it was Project Manager Fran Reck came in and talked about sea level rise impacts to Oregon's tidal wetlands. This is a funding by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Coastal Program and the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board. It talked about mapping 23 Oregon estuaries and 6 potential sea level rise scenarios. We have some serious problems in the future because of sea level rise along the coast. 23 estuaries were studied up and down the coast, pretty much all of them except the Columbia River, because the Columbia River is just so big. The scope of this was to the smaller estuaries along the coast, and it was startling. Old diking districts and dikes, if we get like a 2-foot rise, which is the conservative estimate over the next 100 years or less, this startling, the struggles that we'll face along the coast with just the low end of the sea level rise predicted in the next 50 years. I'll send a copy of this PowerPoint. We also talked about Sea Grant and the Oregon Coastal Zone Management Association losing its funding. This will, this is a handout. Take a look at that. If Sea Grant goes away, very important mission. Just the numbers itself are startling to lose the grant for sea. This is, I also handed out a letter from the Coastal Caucus with very serious concerns about the declaration of an emergency for the salmon for this year, particularly in the Klamath and the Sacramento rivers. Things are not looking good in the Columbia River right now also. We hope it's just simply because of the cold water. This is also going to affect NOAA funding and the Coast Guard helicopter base in Newport, which is something this board wrote a letter supporting when it was threatened with cuts before. So there's a lot of challenges on the budget level, and this is one of the reasons why I'm so proud of Senators Wyden and Merkley for really stepping up and pushing back to preserve these really, really important programs. Had a meeting with the executive director of the Oregon Northwest Workforce Investment Board, which I'm a member of. It was a good meeting. There's some funding concerns there also, but we're just going to move on. Basically, the Oregon Northwest Workforce Investment Board is made up of Lincoln, Tillamook, Columbia, and Clatsop County. And this is our area district. And Heather is the executive director, and it covers the areas of like job force training, green certification, and the blue building down here where the unemployment office is. We don't call it the unemployment office anymore. I can't remember the name. I'm embarrassed.
The employment office.
Workforce or something.
Workforce Development Office, I think. But it's interesting that we have the lowest unemployment rate seasonally adjusted that we've had in a long time. So that's good news. And that's pretty much all I have. And County Manager Moore. Did you have a quick question?
I just wanted to, excuse me, Cam, I don't, and what you're talking about reminding me that on June 2nd, there is the, doggone it, the Science to Policy Summit by the Lower Columbia Estuary Partnership. That's going to be, it's going to be in Vancouver, Washington, and the Honorable Suzanne Bonamici is going to be there along with some other people. And if you're interested in that, you probably got that, but I'm going to try to go now that the FTLC meeting has been canceled. So I went to the Estuary Summit, was it last year, and I learned a lot. And I think it's good for our community, this sort of information. So that's it. Thanks.
So wait, I got one thing too, I forgot. Because there's going to be the fishery tour, I forgot. The 31st, the first annual Community Leaders Commercial Fisheries Tour.
Cross that one off my list.
Okay, fine, you got it, take it. So, well, it's just like, okay, you got that one?
You got it.
All right, well, you better call fast because it's filling up, but it's Cooperative Extension and Sea Grant again, just another loss if we lose them. Go ahead, please. I think we're finally done.
Just a couple of things quickly. Our next meeting is June 14th. A couple of things important about that. I think at this point it looks like Dan Gaffney will be bringing to you a recommendation for our preschool feasibility study. And so please be prepared for that. The second thing on the 14th is that is the public hearing on the FY18 budget, and then adoption of that budget is currently scheduled for June 28th. So hopefully people will come out and let us know what they think of the budget. And then also just wanted to comment briefly, last week we had the long-awaited joint city-county meeting, which I think by all accounts people felt was very valuable. What I'm going to try to do, and hope we can maybe do this twice a year instead of once a year, so I'm going to try to see if we can look for a date, maybe November or the first part of December, try to have another one of these before the end of the year. So again, I'll just start working on dates, and hopefully we can find some dates that work for folks, and we'll be able to do it. I realize that gets into sometimes a busy time of the year for people, depending on holiday plans, other things. But so anyway, that's really it for me. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
There was a very nice notice, mention of that in the paper of the elected officials meeting. I don't know if you saw that, but thank you, Daily A.
All right.
I just need to clarify, was there a second reading on the ordinance 17-02?
No, there wasn't.
Would you mind reading it?
I can do that.
Page 128.
Good for the clerk of the board.
Good catch. Could I get the second reading of the, Chris, you want to do that?
Certainly. Glasses here.
Conduct the second reading by title only.
Before the Board of Commissioners for Clatsop County, ordinance number 17-02, an ordinance adopting legislative text amendments to the comprehensive plan and land use and land and water development and use ordinance number 480-14 regarding the Southwest Coastal Citizens Advisory Committee, Arch Cape Rural Community, and additional requirements for citizen involvement countywide.
Thank you. Okay. The meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. Congratulations, Mr. Spence. Good job. Good campaign. Look forward to working with you. Yeah.
You